Okay, here is the ticket for the problem number 3 on the SIG test, your 4th attempt. Let's do about half of these and then you can finish up the rest. So we got to first complete the generic rectangle and then write the area as a product and as a sum. So if we start with this first one here, we know that this 4x and this blank location here have to multiply to be 8x to the third. So to get that 8, we need to have a 2. Because 2 times 4 is the 8, and x times what gives us x to the third, and that's going to be x squared. And now that we have this location up here, we should be able to figure out this blank spot here, because 2x squared times this blank spot has to equal 6x squared, which means we only need a 3. 3 times 2 is the 6, and there's your x squared, so we didn't need any more x's. Now that we have the edge over there, we can fill out this next column. 4x times negative x will go in this location here. That would be negative 4x squared. And negative x times 3 is negative 3x. Alright, last column. 4x times this blank location has to equal negative 4x, which means this guy is just negative 1. Because negative 1 times 4 is negative 4 with that x that's still there. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, and that completes the generic rectangle. Now to write a product, we simply take the edges along the outside, length times width if you will, but I'm going to start with the width because I like starting with the binomial. 4x plus 3, use parentheses, multiplied by what's going across the top up there. I see 2x squared minus x minus 1, and there is your product. And we know that's equal to the area of all 6 of these rectangles added up. So I'm going to start with the top left box here. That's 8x cubed. And I'm going to notice that these diagonals right here are like terms. So when you add those together, go ahead and combine them correctly to get 2x squareds. And on to these guys, which are also like terms. If you add those together, you get negative 7x. And finally, the negative 3 has nobody to be combined with, so we just write it. So there's your product, 2 things being multiplied together. There's your sum, a bunch of things being added up. Okay, let's move on to B. 3x times this blank location has to be 3x squared, therefore it's a plain x. Because 3x times x is 3x squared. Now that I have that, I know that this bottom left box here is 8 times x, just giving you 8x. And now a little tricky one here. We've got this positive 8 multiplied by this blank location here has to equal negative 16. Move that mouse out of the way. So we're looking at negative 2, because negative 2 times positive 8 is negative 16. Which will allow you to fill in this blank spot here. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. And that completes the generic rectangle. So our product is 3x plus 8 times x minus 2. Now, in case you're wondering, it's okay to write what's going across the top first and what's going down the side second. That's not wrong. So if you felt like that's what you wanted to do and you were curious, both are correct. I don't care. And we know that's equal to all of those rectangles added up, starting with the 3x squared. Here are our like terms, so let's go ahead and combine those. Add those together, you get positive 2x, and finally minus 16. There's your sum. All right, let's try one more so you don't have to do as many. Let's do C. And let's start with what we can see. We know we got negative 3 times this blank location here has to be negative 9x squared. So I know it has to be positive 3 because negative 3 times positive 3 is the negative 9. But I have no x's down here, which means all of them need to be located up here, x squared. If I take a peek down here, this one should be friendly. That's just negative 3 times negative 3. Or positive 9 is that box. That one was pretty friendly. How about we take a look at this guy right here? Because this blank spot times negative 3 has to equal 3x. Since that's a negative, this guy here also has to be negative in order to get this positive answer. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Now I didn't need to write that one because the other thing we need here is the x in order to get that x. So you could have just wrote negative x, and I will do that when I write the sum down here. So negative 1x times 3x squared is negative 3x to the third, or cubed. Negative 1x times this location has to be 5x squared. So we know it has to be negative. That's how we generate the positive there, a negative times a negative. 1 times 5 is going to get you the 5 you need. And here's one of those x's. In order to get x squared, we need to have another x here. Negative 5x times that negative 3 is positive 15x. And that concludes the generic rectangle. Now we head to the product. Negative x, there's where I left off the 1 because you don't really need it, times negative 3, that's what's going down the side here, multiplied by, going across the top, are those three things. There is your product, and that's equal to, now we add up all 6 of these things. I always start with that top left box, negative 3x to the third, and then I combine the diagonals assuming that they are like terms, which they are again here. Negative 4x squared. 15x and 3x, that's a big 18x. And lastly is that 9. Okay. Hopefully you did those. You have 3 more to complete on your own. Bring that in, print it, and take your 4th attempt. Good luck.